This is Street versus Taylor. Are the parties present and ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Do we have any housekeeping matters to take up before we start with pretrial issues?
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff, I'm Kevin Littlejohn II. Myself, along with my co-counsel, Ms. Madeline Light, are here today proudly representing the plaintiff in this matter, Ms. Jordan Street, as the executor of her daughter's estate, Rory Street. We have just a few procedural matters that I'd like to bring up to the court when the court's ready, as well as one substantive matter as well.
Very well. Let's go ahead and take those up now.
Yes, Your Honor.
Matters, that is.
Yes, Your Honor. Just procedurally, I'd like to make the court aware to a previous court order that several pieces of evidence have been previously admitted. And I'd like to bring to the court's attention that particularly exhibits 16 and 17 have been previously admitted pursuant to Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Your Honor. That concludes my procedural matters.
Very well. Anything procedural from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning. My name is Carson Sadro, and I'm here alongside co-counsel Mr. Chance Stirrup today. And together we represent the defendant in today's case, Ms. Reese Taylor. Your Honor, we do have one additional preliminary matter to take up with the court, and that's just to draw the court's attention that Exhibit 18 has also been ordered as pre-admitted into evidence.
Very well.
And then we also do have two substantive motions to address with the court at the appropriate time.
All right, we will take up the substantive motions from the plaintiff now.
Yes, Your Honor. I previously spoke with opposing counsel prior to trial today about some evidence testimony that we would like to be ruled as inadmissible. By way of brief background, this is a wrongful death action that Ms. Street has brought against the defendant. We anticipate the evidence today will show that on September 7th, 2018, the defendant, Coach Reese Taylor, in fact, led a practice that was unsafe and used drills that were dangerous and resulted in harm to Rory Taylor. Because of that, Your Honor, that brings us to our first motion in limb and our only motion in limb. Prior to trial, we spoke with opposing counsel about some testimony that could come in through an athletic trainer and at one time teacher for Rory Street. We would ask the court to limit that testimony to not bring up any evidence or any testimony about the actions of Ms. Streeter's friends, as they're irrelevant and would be used for an improper propensity purpose, Your Honor.
Defense?
Yes, Your Honor, we agreed to that motion pre-trial. We're happy to do that.
And that concludes our substantive motions, Your Honor.
All right. We will hear the defense's motion in limiting next. If you would proceed, please.
Yes, Your Honor. The first motion that we have to address before the court is one that we were able to agree with opposing counsel before trial began. By brief way of background for this motion, after the death of Rory Street on September 7th, 2018, Waco High School instituted a practice where they began putting out shade tents and providing Gatorade to players during practice. We would move to exclude that under Rule 407 as a subsequent remedial measure, and opposing counsel did agree to this motion prior to trial.
Very well. That motion, is that the case, plaintiff's counsel?
Yes, Your Honor. We do not intend to use that testimony as a subsequent remedial measure.
All right. The defense motion in limine regarding the subsequent remedial measure will be granted.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed with my next motion?
Yes, you may.
Your Honor, by brief way of background for this motion, prior to working at Waco High School, Coach Reese Taylor had another job at Waco University High School. At that high school, it's alleged that Coach Taylor pushed another student to the ground during a game. We have a good faith belief today that that opposing counsel is going to use this testimony to show an action in conformity therewith. That because Coach Taylor pushed a student to the ground on in a previous occasion, that it was more likely that she did that on September 7th. Therefore, it is inadmissible under Rule 404B, and we move to exclude any mention of that testimony.
Plaintiff, do you have a response?
Yes, Your Honor. While it is true that the federal rules of evidence do bar the use of propensity evidence in the case of a civil matter, the rules do allow for the use of that propensity evidence if we can point to a non-propensity purpose under Federal Rule of Evidence 404B. And that is what we intend to do today, which is point to the fact of the intent behind the actions of the coach. The coach here today is claiming that this was an accident that occurred to Rory Street. However, this evidence will show that in the past, opposing counsel's defense witness has actually done this before and intentionally did it again this time.
May I respond to that, Your Honor?
Briefly.
Intent is one of those things captured in Rule 404B2, and 404B2 specifically addresses those permissible uses in criminal matters. However, that exception doesn't apply in a civil case. And the intent of Coach Taylor on one specific occasion in the past can't be used to prove his intent on September 7th, 2018. Or her intent, excuse me.
Your Honor, if it may be heard.
Briefly.
Yes, Your Honor. 404B2 does not speak to only criminal cases. 404B2 speaks to the cases in which civil trials do not allow for propensity evidence whatsoever. And the only way you can use character evidence is through a non-propensity purpose, which would be intent to show that in the past, the coach had the requisite intent to commit harm against the student. And in this case here today, she contained the same, she had the same intent on September 7th, 2018.
All right, defendant, your motion will be denied. Do we have any other further motions before we move on to opening statements?
No, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed.
Plaintiff, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor, if I may. Ready to proceed, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready.
May it please the court. When the public entrusts someone with coaching our student athletes, that person has a responsibility. They have to conduct their practices as safe as reasonably possible and not put our students in harm's way. However, on September 7th, 2018, the defendant chose not to conduct her practices as safe as reasonably possible and instead put Rory Street directly in harm's way. Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Kevin Littlejohn II, and I, along with my co-counsel, Ms. Madeline Light, are here today proudly representing the plaintiff, Jordan Street, as the executor of her daughter's estate, Rory Street. Now, before we discuss the evidence and testimony you'll hear today, I need to first take you back to September 7th, 2018. The 3 o'clock bell just sounds at Waco High School. Rory Street leaves her final class and heads directly for the women's locker room. She arrives, she sets down her book bag, she picks up her jersey, she laces up her soccer cleats, and she heads out to soccer practice. And as soon as she opens the door to get outside, she's immediately confronted with the harshness of the 103-degree Waco summer heat. However, Rory still makes it to the field. And she arrives, and soon thereafter, she hears the defendant's whistle screech through the air. Her and her teammates begin to do warm-ups, and they begin to stretch. The defendant blows her whistle one more time and instructs Rory and her teammates to begin doing several drills. However, during these drills, Rory begins to not feel well. She has trouble dribbling the soccer ball down the field. She begins to struggle handling passes that are kicked towards her. She even misses open net goal kicks that she normally would make. And then she hears the screech of the defendant's whistle again. The defendant noticed these things too. And instead of hearing, "Rory, are you okay? Do you need to go see the trainer?" Rory hears, "Take your butt to Burma Road. You're of no use to me here. I'm going to run you until you pass out." Rory doesn't complain. She simply picks herself up, heads to the adjacent field, and begins her conditioning. And as Rory is trying to do what the defendant instructs her to do, she still struggles. And that's when she hears the defendant's whistle again. She thinks this is the whistle that will end her conditioning. But instead, the defendant calls her back to the practice field, and Rory is forced to listen as her coach instructs her teammates to slide tackle her over and over again. Rory gets in position as she's told by her coach. She puts her feet directly on the goal line, with the soccer ball just between her legs. With her teammates 10 yards away from her and with 15 of them ready to slide tackle her. And then the defendant's whistle pierces the air around that field. Rory begins to dribble the ball when suddenly her first teammate slide tackles directly into her and knocks her to the ground. And before Rory can even get up, the defendant puts her hand on her jersey and forces her back to her feet and tells her to do it again. Rory listens. She puts her feet back on that goal line. She puts the ball back between her legs. The defendant's whistle pierces the air again, and Rory begins to dribble. And then the second teammate runs directly at her, slide tackles her, and Rory crashes to the ground. And for 14 times in a row, the defendant blew her whistle. Until on the 15th time, she said, "Do it again, one last time." Rory put her feet on the goal line one last time. She put the soccer ball between her legs one last time. She dribbled the soccer ball one last time. When the defendant blew her whistle, Rory's teammate crashed into her one last time. Rory collapsed to the ground. And as she lay on the field where she played the game she loves, Rory's heart beat one last time. Your Honor, it's the defendant's reckless acts in conducting his practice, coupled with the direct harm that he put Rory Street in on September 7th, 2018, that have resulted in us bringing this case before you here today. Now, this is a negligence action that's before you. And as the plaintiff, we shoulder the burden of proof. And what we have to do today is bring you the evidence you will need to show you that it's more likely than not that the defendant breached the duty of care that he owed to Rory Street, and that breach of his or her duty resulted in Rory dying. And remember, Your Honor, after today, you will know that that is exactly what happened in this case. Now, in order to do this, you'll hear from several witnesses. And as the plaintiff, our witnesses will go first. And first, you'll hear testimony from an expert, Dr. Mcconaughey. And you'll learn from Dr. Mcconaughey, who has a lot of experience in the field of cardiology, that yes, Rory Streeter did have trace amounts of cocaine in her system. But that was not the cause of her death. It was actually her being exposed to intense and high degrees of heat. And then you'll hear from the mother of Rory Street, Miss Jordan Street. You'll find out that Miss Street thought her daughter was amazing, that Rory had aspirations of playing Division I soccer, that all of Rory's life she was healthy and had a clean bill of health, and that Miss Street never once knew that her daughter would be the subject of a slide tackling drill, and she never thought that when she sent her daughter to school on September 7th, 2018, her daughter would never return. And then lastly, you'll hear from one of the best friends of Rory Street, Miss Abigail Saccharin. And she'll tell you that Rory was a great friend and a great teammate. You'll learn that on the day in question, it was upwards of 103 degrees, and that they never once had used this slide tackling drill in practice at all. And that Abby heard the coach say, "Rory, take your butt to Burnham Road. You're of no use to me here. I'm going to run you until you pass out." And once you hear all that evidence and testimony, Your Honor, we'll have met our burden here today. But in an attempt to convince you otherwise, opposing counsel will have a chance to present their witnesses. And we anticipate you'll hear from their expert and 2 other witnesses. And no matter what you hear from their expert, you'll learn that their expert only has a bachelor's degree in toxicology and can't provide you with a definitive cause for Rory's death. We anticipate you actually hear from the personal trainer from Waco High School. You'll learn that trainer was very new to his role and that they were yards away when Rory was on the field at soccer practice. And lastly, you'll hear from the defendant. And no matter what the defendant says at trial here today, she'll have to admit that Rory was one of her best players. She'll have to admit that she intended to punish Rory with the drills that she put her through. And that Rory did die during the drills at the defendant's soccer practice. And at the conclusion of all that evidence and testimony, my co-counsel, or I'm going to come back before you, and I'm going to summarize all the facts and all the evidence you've heard here today. And I'm going to ask that you return a verdict finding that the defendant is liable. And I'm confident that you'll do this today because the evidence today will show that on September 7th, 2018, the defendant chose not to run her practices as safe as reasonably possible, and she chose to put Rory Street directly in harm's way. Thank you, Your Honor.
Defense, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Something was different. It's September 7th, 2018. Coach Reese Taylor is gearing up for the start of the high school soccer season. She's excited. Her kids have been practicing for a few weeks now, and it looks like this team has what it takes to make it all the way. So she shows up to practice, steps out of her car, smells the freshly cut grass, notices the Texas heat outside, but sees that her girls are already warming up. She thinks that this practice, it's going to be like any other. She had no idea that something was different. Now, you may be asking yourself, what was different? Well, it wasn't the players. It wasn't the drills they were running. It wasn't the coach. It wasn't the practice. Your Honor, you'll hear today that what was different was Rory Street and the cocaine she had in her system. Now, the plaintiff just got up here a moment ago, and they tried to tell you all about this big, bad Coach Taylor, a woman who would make her kids run drills excessively. She pushed them over the line and pushed them past their boundaries and their capabilities. But, Your Honor, what you're actually going to learn today is that's not what happened. What you'll learn actually happened was that Coach Taylor ran this practice like she had been running them for years. She provided water for the athletes, made sure that they could take breaks whenever they wanted to, and she kept an athletic trainer on site. This was usual. And Coach Taylor started off that practice by having some of her students run a drill called Burma Road that you just heard about. It's kind of like running suicides on a basketball court. You'll learn that the kids at Waco High School have been running this drill for decades. And after that Burma Road drill, Coach Taylor had them do something called a slide tackle drill. The plaintiff a moment ago told you that this slide tackle drill, well, it had never been done before, and surely this is where it got dangerous. what you're actually going to learn today is that slide tackles, they're a normal part of a soccer game. They happen all of the time. And so Coach Taylor had her students run those drills so that they could prepare for them. And first up on September 7th of 2018 was Rory Street, one of her star players. And as Rory began to run this drill, she was running it like she always did, normally, without any difficulty. Every time she got knocked down by another player, she popped back up and head over to the sidelines, ready to go again. You'll learn that suddenly Rory collapsed. You learn that Coach Taylor rushed over from the sidelines to see what was wrong. In a panic, she calls 911, "Please, someone come help." But it was too late. Coach Taylor wondered what could have gone wrong. This practice was like any other. We always run drills like this. What was different? Your Honor, something was different. It was Rory Street and the cocaine in her system, not Coach Taylor. That was different. But despite this, the plaintiff has sued Reese Taylor for negligence for the wrongful death of Rory Street. And when they decided to do that, that meant that they have to prove a couple of things to you. It meant that they have to prove that Coach Taylor had a duty, that she breached that duty, that her breach actually caused Rory's death. And to do that, we anticipate that they're going to call a couple of witnesses today. And when they do, I want you to pay close attention. Ask yourself what those witnesses couldn't have seen, what even those closest to Rory didn't know. Now, we're also going to call a couple of witnesses in today's case. You're going to be able to hear from Coach Taylor herself, and she's going to tell you that, yes, she is a tough coach. She's a little bit old school, but she doesn't ever push her kids past their breaking point. She knows how to push them, to motivate them safely. She's been doing this for 26 years. She'll tell you she was shocked when Rory collapsed. She'll tell you she never saw anything wrong. She'll tell you she had no idea that Rory had taken cocaine. Throughout today's trial, I want you to keep a couple of questions in mind. I want you to ask yourself, what was different about this practice? And two, what actually killed Rory? Your Honor, we're confident that at the end of today's trial, you're going to see that the answer to both of those questions is cocaine. The cocaine in Rory's system is the something that was different on September 7th, 2018. Not Coach Taylor. And for those reasons, at the end of today's trial, I'm going to come before you again and ask that you find Coach Taylor not liable. Thank you.
All right, plaintiff, would you call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, I would like to read some testimony from the Exhibit 16 and 17 that we discussed pre-trial. I'm the expert for our case in chief. If Your Honor would allow, I would like for my co-counsel to be able to read some selected portions of that expert testimony while I direct her, Your Honor.
Very well.
Ms. Madeline Lipe, if you could please join me. Good morning, Ms. Light. Can you hear me clearly? I think you're still muted on my end too, Ms. Maddie.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. All right. Turning to Exhibit 17 first. Can you read whose expert testimony this is?
Yes, this is the expert testimony of Regan Mcconaughey, MD, from McLennan County Memorial Hospital.
And what is this document?
This is Dr. McConaughey's CV.
If you could please, under that experience bullet point, can you just read the highlighted portion?
From 2010 to present, Dr. McConaughey is the Chief of Cardiology in McLennan County Memorial Hospital in Waco, Texas.
And then looking at the bottom of Exhibit 17, can you read the highlighted portion under education as well?
Yes, Baylor College of Medicine, MD.
Thank you. I'd like to turn your attention now to Exhibit 16, please. Now, who is Exhibit 16 from?
Regan Mcconaughey, MD of McLennan County Memorial Hospital.
And can you read those three highlight lines on Exhibit 16, page 1?
Dear Mr. Dewey, this letter is intended to serve as my expert report in the above referenced matter.
And now can I turn your attention to page 2, please? And starting at the bottom with the highlight portion, can you begin reading from page 2 on to page 3?
Aubrey Saracen described Rory Street was playing sloppy on the day in question. Once Rory Street was running Burma Road, Aubrey Saracen described her as really struggling and unusually pale. According to Aubrey Saracen, at that point, Rory Street said that she was feeling funny and complained of chest pain. Moments later, when Coach Taylor had Rory line up for the slide tackling drill, Aubrey Saracen described Rory as really pale, like lifeless almost, hands on her hips and breathing heavy. Finally, after the 15th slide tackle, Aubrey Saracen described Rory lying on the ground, groaning and convulsing.
And can you read the last 2 paragraphs as well, please?
Based on all the above, it is my opinion within a reasonable degree of medical certainty that Rory Street died as a result of heat exhaustion and or heat stroke on September 8th, 2018. It is also my opinion within a reasonable degree of medical certainty that Rory Street's death was not a result of cocaine use. First, even if there was cocaine use on the day in question, there is no indication that Rory Street was a habitual user of cocaine, as indicated on the autopsy report by the fact that there was no irritation of the throat. Drug tests for cocaine typically have a lower cutoff level between 5 and 150 nanograms per millimeter, with 5 being very low and 150 being high. The amount of cocaine found in Rory Street's system was only 60 nanograms, which is a finding consistent with the ingestion of only a nominal amount of cocaine, or that there was a great deal of time between ingestion and testing.
Thank you, Ms. Light. Your Honor, that concludes the expert testimony I would like to have read.
Very well, thank you.
At this time, I would like to call Ms. Light back before you to constructively read the deposition testimony of a previously stipulated unavailable witness, Ms. Jordan Street, party to this case.
Very well, proceed.
Ms. Light, if you could join us again, please. Ms. Light, do you have the deposition testimony of Jordan Street before you?
I do, yes.
I'm going to just turn to page 2 and start from there, please. Question. Good morning. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Jordan Street.
How old are you?
I'm 55 years old.
Where are you from?
I live in Waco and have all my life.
Do you have any children?
I am not. I was married, but my spouse passed away several years ago.
Do you have any children?
I did. My daughter, Rory.
I'm showing you what's been previously marked as Exhibit 3, Your Honor. It's been previously admitted into evidence. Can you pull that up for us, Ms. Light? Ms. Rory, who is this? Oh, is this a photograph of Rory?
Yes, this is a photograph of Rory.
And this is a fair and accurate depiction of Rory as she appeared on September 7th, 2018?
Yes.
What happened to Rory?
He died at soccer practice on September 7th, 2018.
Now, turning your attention to page 3, line 17, or line 11. Was Rory in high school?
Yes.
And where did she go to school?
Rory went to Waco High, just like me.
When did she start playing soccer?
Oh gosh, when she was little, 4 or 5 years old. I went and signed her up to get her started with just being out and being athletic and being around other kids. But she took right to it and never looked back. Before you knew it, we were spending weekends driving all over Texas to soccer tournaments, and the next 12 or so years were just kind of a blur. Soccer tournaments, soccer practices, soccer camps, soccer everything.
Now, I want to turn your attention to page 4, line 4. Was Rory good?
Oh, Rory was a superb athlete. She had gotten several scholarship offers from Division I programs to play soccer in college. Southern Methodist University, Dallas Baptist University, Austin College, and the University of Texas at Dallas. They had all offered her a scholarship. It was so exciting to think about being able to watch her play at the top level in college against some of the best in the country. Plus, she would have gotten a great education. She had such a bright future, and I was excited to see it all play out.
Now, if you could please pull down Exhibit 3, slide. Now, turning to page 5, question 5. Do you still play like in local non-competitive matches?
No, I had to quit my junior year of college because I had a pretty serious injury during a game. An opposing player slide tackled me from behind and broke my leg and ankle in several places. I could have played my senior year, but I just wasn't as good as I used to be, and I decided not to continue. I enjoyed playing with Rory while she was young, though.
Turning your attention to page 6, line 10. Was Rory a troubled kid?
No, Rory was a good kid.
Turning your attention to page 7, line 8. Did Rory regularly visit her pediatrician?
At least once a year for a physical.
During any of those yearly physicals, were there any issues?
None. Rory had never had any serious medical issues, just normal kid stuff.
And now turning your attention to page 7, line 19. Question. When you were playing soccer at Waco High, did you ever have to run Burma Road? And Your Honor, before she answers, I would like to make the court aware that there is potentially offensive language in this response. I'd like the court to be aware of.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I would just make an objection to relevance. May I be heard on the issue?
You may.
Your Honor, whether or not Miss Jordan Street ran Burma Road while she was in high school has no bearing on any fact of consequence in determining this wrongful death action that we have before us today. Therefore, it's irrelevant.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. The bar for relevancy is extremely low. The federal rules of evidence state that evidence is relevant if it has a tendency to make any fact of consequence more or less probable. Ms. Street's familiarity with the Burma Road conditioning drill is relevant because if it was done while she was in school and how it was used for her and her teammates can show how the coach in this matter, aka the defendant, used the drill improperly, which makes that evidence relevant.
Your objection will be overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
I'll repeat the question. When you were playing soccer at Waco High, did you ever have to run Burma Road?
Hell yeah, we did. I remember doing that when we were dogging it or if we weren't in the correct position or something. Coach would send us off to run Burma Road. But I'll tell you this, none of my coaches ever made me or any other kid keep going when it was obvious that we were exhausted. Discipline is one thing, but that is just dangerous.
Do you know what a slide tackle is?
Yes, excuse me, sure.
And turning your attention to question or line 9, are slide tackles violent?
They can be. I mean, it's soccer. So a lot of the injuries are pretend, acting. But anytime you're running full speed and you slide feet first at another player's legs, that can be a dangerous situation.
And why are they dangerous?
I mean, I just mentioned breaking my leg in college from getting slide tackled. That was only a few minutes ago. Weren't you listening?
Thank you, Your Honor. That concludes the deposition testimony from Ms. Jordan Street, past the witness.
Any cross?
Yes, Your Honor. We also have several portions of that deposition we would like to be on the record. May my co-counsel assist me in reading them?
Yes, she may.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm going to direct your attention to page 3, line 1. Were you there at practice that day?
No, I was at work.
So do you have any information or knowledge about what happened that day?
No, other than what I've heard from others about what happened, but I didn't see it.
Now directing your attention to page 5, line 12. Did you push Rory to be an athlete?
I don't know if I would use the word push. I encouraged Rory to work hard at sports and at everything else in her life. I taught Rory to never show weakness and to never complain. I wanted her to be tough, to play through the pain, because that is what makes a champion. Rory was tough because I made her tough.
Did you ever hold Rory back in school?
We did, just 1 year. We held her back in the 7th grade so that she could get bigger and faster, which we thought would give her an advantage in high school playing against younger kids. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but it's actually pretty common now. The college is expensive, and we wanted to give Rory the best chance we could at getting a scholarship. Hell, Rory might have been good enough to go pro. I certainly saw that possibility and encouraged Rory to keep that option open.
Did you have to stay on top of Rory to make sure she was practicing and keeping up with exercising?
Not any more than any other parent of a teenager. Rory sometimes wanted to goof off instead of following Coach Taylor's non-practice exercise routines, and I would have to remind her of what soccer means for college and maybe a pro career.
Now directing your attention to line 18. Was Rory a discipline problem?
No, not any more than other kids that age. I mean, she was a little wild and liked to have fun, but she wasn't some hippie smoking dope behind the school
Your
or
Honor.
some party.
Speculation.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Okay.
Your Honor, these are the words of the decedent's mother. She certainly has sufficient facts and knowledge to make an assertion about what she observed her daughter doing or not doing.
May I hear the question?
Yes, Your Honor. It says, was Rory a discipline problem?
I'm going to overrule the objection.
If I just maybe briefly heard, Your Honor.
Very briefly.
I'm not objecting to the question. It's the response from the witness saying that at school, Rory was never some hippie.
I'm still going to overrule your objection, counsel.
Okay. Thank you.
So was Rory a discipline problem?
No, not any more than other kids that age. I mean, she was a little wild and liked to have fun, but she wasn't some hippie smoking dope behind the school or some party animal who stayed out all night. Rory got in trouble a few times and I got called by the principal a few times, but it was just normal teenager stuff, being late to class, goofing around, or missing some homework assignments. I was confident that she would graduate and go on to college. I know that.
Do you believe that discipline is important for a kid?
Yes, 100% yes. You know, my granddaddy always said, spare the rod, spoil the child. And I believe in that. You can't let them get away with being lazy and entitled. You have to keep them in line.
Now directing your attention to page 8, line 5. Are slide tackles part of the game of soccer?
Of course they are. Turn on any game and you're going to see players at every level performing slide tackles. That is part of the deal.
Now turning your attention to page 9, line 11. Did you have any part in Coach Taylor being hired?
Yes, I was instrumental in getting Coach Taylor hired. I wish I hadn't been, but I was.
Well, why did you want Coach Taylor?
We wanted a winning coach, and I wanted Rory to be coached by a winner. That was what we wanted, and we thought Coach Taylor was the right person for that job. Looking back now, it was obviously a huge mistake on my part.
Thank you, Your Honor. Pass the witness.
Anything further from the plaintiff?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right. The witness can step down, or the counsel can step down. Call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, we'd like to call as a live witness Miss Aubrey Saccharin.
Very well. Ms. Saracen, you've been sworn.
Saracen. Good afternoon, Ms. Saracen. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well. You've had a chance, me and you've had a chance to get to know one another, but if you could, please introduce yourself to Your Honor.
Hi, I'm Aubrey. I'm a high schooler at Waco High.
And Aubrey, why are you here today?
So I'm here because my friend Rory died a few years ago back on the soccer field.
Now, I want to talk in detail about that incident, but before we do, let's let Your Honor learn a little bit more about you. Where do you currently live?
So I live right here in Waco.
Have you lived here your entire life?
Yes,
And are you in school currently?
I am. I'm finishing up my last year of high school, and then I'm going on to Rice University.
Oh, while you're in high school, have you been involved in any sort of extracurricular activities?
Yes, so I played soccer all 4 years through high school.
Now, you mentioned that you're going to Rice University. Are you playing soccer there as well?
Yeah, so I got there on a merit scholarship.
And do you intend to play soccer there?
Yes.
Now, how are you familiar with Rory Street?
Rory was one of my really good friends in high school, and she was on the soccer team as well.
And for about how long have you known her?
I mean, most of our whole lives, but we were really great friends, and I really loved Rory and having her around.
Now, I want to switch gears and talk a little bit more about Rory in detail. Now, you two were on the same soccer team, right?
Yes, we were.
And can you describe for us the kind of teammate Rory was?
I mean, Rory was the best teammate that you could ask for, and she was always there. And she was just an excellent soccer player. I mean, she could do things on the field that no one else could do, and it was amazing.
And when you say she was an excellent soccer player, what sorts of things make for a good soccer player?
Just being able to do those hard passing drills and being a good teammate and being physically fit, just all that going into being a really successful athlete that Rory was.
Now, who is the coach of your soccer team?
Sorry.
You're fine.
It's just hard to think about. Our coach was Coach Taylor, unfortunately.
And is Coach Taylor the defendant in this case?
Yes.
And how long did you play for Coach Taylor?
All 4 years that I played in high school.
Now, I want to talk to you a little bit more about Coach Taylor at this point. Can you describe for us what Coach Taylor was like as a coach?
She was a tough coach. She had us do a lot of drills, and she would get frustrated and angered easily when we couldn't do the drills correctly.
Now, were you ever upset by anything that Coach Taylor did to you?
I don't know if I'd say I was upset. I mean, I was a little bummed out when I lost my starting position to Coach Taylor's daughter, but I wasn't super upset about that. It's just one of those things that happens.
And has that experience with Coach Taylor impacted your ability to be truthful here at trial today?
Definitely not. I'm here just because I want to see that Rory gets the justice that she deserved.
Now, I want to switch your attention to discuss September 7th, 2018. I understand that that day might be a sensitive topic for you, so if you need to take a moment, feel free to do so. Can you describe for us what that day was like?
Yeah, so that was the day of Rory's death. It started out normal, but it was a really hot Texas day when we were having practice.
Now, Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to have Ms. Light show before you what's been previously admitted as Joint Exhibit 21, an NOAA weather report for Waco, Texas.
Very well.
Ms. Light, if you could please put the exhibit page 2 on the slide or on the Zoom, please. Well, actually, Ms. Light, let's go back to page 1 first. Now, Ms. Saracen, can you see exhibit 21?
Yeah, I can see it.
And what is it?
This is a weather report from September 7th of 2018, the day that I was talking about earlier.
Ms. Light, can we go to page 2, please? Now, what time was your practice on September 7th?
They were usually in the afternoon, so between right around like 3 and 4. But you can see there that even earlier in the day, it was just a really hot Texas day.
And can you tell us what the temperatures were in the afternoon during your hours of practice from 2:51 all the way to 4:51?
Yeah, it was 103 to 104, and it was just, scorching hot, especially on that field where there's no shade. It's just the sun beating right down onto you.
Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to highlight those 3 fields?
Yes, you may.
Now, was it common for you all to practice in September at these times?
It was. It just kind of depended on, sometimes our games were a different time, but we did practice in the afternoons after school.
Now, why would your games be at different times during this point in the year?
Well, because of how hot it was, sometimes they wanted the games to be at night instead, just to try and not have us play those really intense games when it's, over 100 degrees.
Okay, so now I want to talk about the practice. Can you describe for us how Rory was playing at that practice?
She wasn't playing like her usual self. I mean, she was missing passes and just not doing the drills like she usually would. So it just was unusual for Rory because she was a really excellent soccer player.
And what happened next?
So because Rory was missing her drills, usually when one of us did that, Coach Taylor, would get pretty upset that we weren't doing the drills correctly, and she would yell at us.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. May I be heard?
You may.
Your Honor, the witness just testified that Coach Taylor would get upset because they weren't doing drills correctly. Your Honor, that is the witness stepping inside the mind of Coach Taylor, and therefore it is speculation.
Response?
If I may be heard. Your Honor, Ms. Saccharin has previously testified that she played under the defendant for 4 years. And in those 4 years, the defendant was her coach. Now, as a lay witness, she's allowed to testify to matters that have been rationally related to her 5 senses. She knows when her coach is upset with her. She can testify to when and how the coach gets upset.
The objection will be overruled. The witness can testify to her perception of her time as a player under Coach Taylor.
Yes, Your Honor.
So Coach Taylor would get really upset when we wouldn't do the drills correctly, and she would yell at us and have us go run a drill that is called Burma Road.
And can you describe for us what the Burma Road drill is?
Yeah, so the first thing you would have to do is that you'd have to dribble the ball for 30 yards, and then you'd have to sprint as fast as you could for the next 30, and then you'd have to bear crawl on your hands and your knees all the way back the 60 yards that you had just run.
Now, at this time, Your Honor, I'd like to have my co-counsel put Exhibit 2, which has also been previously admitted into evidence, on the screen, Your Honor.
It's previously admitted.
Or it might be Exhibit 4. I think it might be Exhibit 4, the field.
Those are marked, I believe, but not admitted.
Okay. Okay. Well, can we constructively put up Exhibit 4 for a moment, please? Thank you. Now, Ms. Saracen, can you see that exhibit?
Yes, so that's an image of our soccer field on there, and then our high school off to the side.
And is this the soccer field that you were practicing on September 7th, 2008?
Yes, it is, in the same soccer field that we played on for all of our practices.
And the same soccer field that the Burma Road drill was run on as well?
Yes.
Has it been altered or changed in any way?
No, it hasn't.
Your Honor, at this time, we offer this exhibit into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Saracen, where exactly, if you can point between the blue box and the red box, were the Burma Road drills taking place?
So the red box represents where we would do the Burma roads. That's a 60-yard area. And then beside it, that blue box is the main area that the practices would be held. So like, when we do our passing drills and our scrimmages, that'd be in the blue box.
Now, when Burma Road drills were done, would the defendant come over to the field where the Burma Road was taking place, or would he stay with the team?
He would stay with the team. When we were sent to do Burma roads, we would just go by ourselves and go over to that red box area to do the drill.
Now, thank you, Ms. Light. We can pull the exhibit down. Ms. Saracen, did Ms. Street come over to you during to do Burma Road on September 7th?
She did. Rory was over there with me as well, just because she hadn't been doing practice as well as she usually did.
And did she say anything while she was over there with you?
She mentioned that.
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Under the Federal Rules of Evidence 8033, a present sense impression, the witness is allowed to testify to how she's feeling. And she does say, if I may proffer, that she's having chest pains, or also that she's feeling funny as well, which are matters that she's expressing while under the feeling of that matter, which is a present sense impression, Your Honor.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. A present sense impression under Rule 8031 is made to describe an event. It doesn't apply under that exception.
Your Honor, if I may be heard again, it was describing the event of how she was feeling that day. Also, under 8033, it could be the then existing mental state of her as well. She was anguishing and laboring.
We'll sustain the objection.
Now, Ms. Saracen, how long were you at the Burn Road?
I can't remember an exact time, but it was a while, and we weren't allowed to stop doing Burma Road until Coach Taylor told us that we were done. And
did the defendant ask for Rory to leave before you left?
Off of Burma Road?
Of Burma Road? Yes, ma'am.
I don't think so. Rory did have to go do drills when she was done with the Burma Road, if that's what you mean.
And describe that drill for us, please.
So the drill that Rory had to do afterwards had to do with striking drills. So when another player would run towards Rory, they would try to get the ball away from Rory and would end up sliding. So it's a sliding drill to try to get the ball out.
Now, had this sliding drill ever been done before in your practices?
Not in that specific way or how long it went for, no.
And can slide tackles be dangerous?
They can. I mean, they're not necessarily designed to be, but the way in which we did them, there was inevitably like physical contact that would happen when someone slid to get the ball, and then usually the person that was getting ran into fell to the ground.
Now, once Rory went over to the slide tackling drill, what'd you see?
Well, I mean, Rory didn't look like her usual self. She was really pale and she was really out of breath. She, like when you exercise a lot and you're tired, your cheeks get like super red. She just didn't look well, or like the rest of us did. And, that's when we started doing the drill and everything just went badly at that point.
And when you say everything went badly, what happened?
Well, Rory tried doing the drill because Rory would always try to do her best, but that just wasn't good enough that day. And when someone tried to slide, she just kept falling over again and again and again. And Coach Taylor would just yank her back up and make her continue doing the drill.
And was there ever a point in time in which Rory didn't get back up?
There was. After we had done it, I don't know, say 15 times or so, Rory didn't get yanked back up, and Rory just laid there and started convulsing.
Did she ever recover?
No.
And is Rory with us here today?
She's not. No, because of what happened that day.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Pass the witness.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
May.
Now, Aubrey, you and Rory were good friends, right?
We were very close friends.
You were best friends.
Yes.
You two played soccer together most of your lives.
Yeah, we did.
You played through summers,
Yes.
winters,
Yeah.
fall,
Yes.
and you both played for Waco High.
We did.
You were both starters.
We were for a while, yeah.
And this was going to be your final season together, right?
Yeah, it was going to be our senior year.
You had high hopes for the season.
Yes, we did.
Now, the season traditionally starts in late August or early September, right?
That's right.
But you start practicing back in early August.
Yes, but, right before the school year starts.
And you start practicing early to get back in shape.
I mean, that's probably one of the reasons, yeah.
Sure, and you practice outside
Yes.
in the Texas heat.
Yes.
And you do that all through August and into September.
Yes, with the practices.
It's the same heat you've been playing in since you were kids.
Yeah, I mean, some days are hotter than others, but we usually play at the same times.
Now, by the time September 7th rolled around, you all had been practicing for several weeks, right?
Yes, that's true.
You spent those several weeks getting used to the heat,
And yes, in practicing.
getting used to conditioning out in it.
Yeah, and sometimes
And-
the fields are different, but yeah.
And when you do these practices, well, the temperature can go above 100 degrees, right?
It did, like on, in September 2018, I mean, it was like 103 or 104 degrees. It was really hot.
Sure, and it's not uncommon for it to be that hot during that time, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And like you just said, specifically on September 7th, that was one of those hot days.
Yeah, I mean, it was scorching. It was super hot.
But that's pretty normal for Waco in September, right?
I think it's normal. I mean, it's always hot, but that day was just particularly very, very hot.
Well, you and Rory have been in that heat,
Yeah, we've been practicing in the afternoons.
and you've played in that heat before.
Yes.
Now, because it can get hot, there's water available at practice, right?
There usually is when we occasionally take breaks.
And you can go and get your water bottle and take breaks during practice whenever you need to, right?
Sometimes, but like when we're running Burma Road, we're not supposed to leave without being told. So it kind of just depends on what we're doing.
But you know that you're allowed to get water whenever you need to.
Yeah.
And on September 7th, practice started at about 3:30 p.m.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And at some time during that practice, you were sent to do those running drills, right?
Yes, the Burma Road drills.
Now, the Burma Road, like you told us on direct, well, that's another field right next to the practice field.
Yeah, it's part of the same field. It's just marked off specifically for us to do Burma Road in.
Now, it's flat. It's a flat field.
Yeah, just green turf.
And it can be about 60 yards long, you said.
Yeah, about that. That's how long the Burma Road drill is.
Now, the drill you were sent to run involves running and dribbling the ball back and forth until Coach Taylor tells you to stop, right?
Right. So we would dribble for 30 yards and then sprint for 30 yards, and then we'd have to bear crawl back to where we started and then do it over and over again.
And on September 7th, you did this drill.
I did, yes.
You were doing it for a while.
Yeah, quite a while that day.
And after you were doing that, well, Coach Taylor sent Rory over to do the drill too.
Yeah, after Coach Taylor yelled at her, she came over there.
And Rory did these drills.
Yeah, I mean, she wasn't playing like her usual self and didn't look totally normal, but she did do them as well.
And after some time, well, Rory got called back over to the main field.
Right.
And Rory ran back over.
Yeah, over to that blue boxed area.
And that's when Coach Taylor had Rory do the slide tackle drill.
Yeah, that was something new that we were doing that day.
Well, slide tackles happen in soccer games, right?
They do. We just hadn't done that drill in that manner before or in that kind of repetition that we did that day.
Now, I just want to be clear, you weren't actually present during the slide tackle drill, were you?
I was still over in Burma Road. And
about 20 yards away, right?
Yes.
Now, you've testified just a moment ago that there were a number of signs and symptoms that Rory was suffering, right?
I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not sure if I'd say suffering. All I know is that Rory wasn't playing like she usually did, and she didn't look great. She didn't look super well that day. She was really hot and didn't look like she was feeling well.
But Aubrey, on September 7th, you never told anyone that Rory didn't look all right, did you?
I didn't. And
you didn't tell Coach Taylor?
No.
You didn't tell the trainer?
No, I don't think anyone said anything.
You didn't tell any of your other teammates?
No, I don't think so.
And on September 8th, the day after Rory died, you never told anyone about that, did you?
About how Rory was feeling?
Right. You never told anyone on September 8th that Rory hadn't been feeling well the day before.
Not that I can recall, no.
But on September 8th, what you did do was send some text messages to a friend, right?
I think so, yes.
And in those text messages, well, you said that Rory collapsed out of nowhere.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Your Honor, may I be heard? Your Honor, this qualifies under the exception of 8031, a present sense impression. It was Aubrey describing how she perceived the events immediately following the day prior. Further, Your Honor, we do acknowledge that this text message was sent the next day. And if Your Honor doesn't find that it's a present sense impression, we do believe that this text message is an appropriate use of the residual hearsay exception under Rule 807 because it meets the sufficient authenticity requirements for justice that 807 requires. This is a text sent by Aubrey. She's able to answer questions about it. And in her prior deposition, she identified that exhibit, authenticated it, and said that it was a fair and accurate representation of what she said on September 8th.
Your Honor, if I may be heard.
You may.
Your Honor, the exception that opposing counsel speaking of 8031 is in fact a present sense impression. And the present tense impression does have a temporal requirement because the federal rules of evidence contemplate that the truth is more likely to be expressed immediately while it's occurring or directly after. Your Honor, that is not the case with this text message. It occurred a full day later. So it doesn't qualify under 803.1. And therefore, because the residual exception still requires that there's a sufficient degree of trustworthiness, that trustworthiness, that is the bedrock of a present tense impression, is not here as well. Therefore, it is not reliable and should not be admitted into evidence and is in fact inadmissible hearsay.
May I be heard on that, Your Honor? Oh, excuse me.
Briefly.
Sorry, excuse me. Yes, Your Honor, that reliability component comes from the fact that the witness is sitting right there on the stand, and she can tell us if these are the words she used to describe what happened on September 7th, the following day on September 8th. Therefore, that authenticity requirement, that reliability component that we're concerned about in 807 is met.
The objection will be sustained.
Yes, Your Honor.
Fine.
Now, Aubrey, you also didn't tell anybody about how Rory was feeling on September 9th, right?
2 days after, I don't recall telling anyone, no.
You didn't tell anybody on September 10th.
No, I don't think so.
In fact, the first time you told anyone that Rory wasn't feeling well on September 7th was in your deposition 7 months after Rory passed away, right?
Yeah, I think that's the first time when I got questioned by the attorneys and they were asking me about it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Pass the witness.
Brief redirect, Your Honor.
Briefly, go ahead.
Ms. Saracen, you mentioned that you and Rory were doing the Burma Road drill. But did you have to do the slide tackling drill?
I did not, no. I was doing Burma Road. Only Rory had to be tackled into.
And is it normal in the game of soccer for 15 people to slide tackle one person, one after another?
No, and it's definitely not something that we ever did before. That was new that day.
And Ms. Saracen, before Rory came to Burma Road, did you hear the defendant say anything?
Yeah.
And what did she say? And what did she say?
I mean, she'd yelled some different things at Rory that day. She had said that Rory was just lollygagging, which is why she had ordered her to go run Burma Road. And then she yelled at her again when she was done doing Burma Road and when she had been ordering her to do the slide tackle.
Did she say anything about trying to cause any sort of harm to Rory?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Did she say anything about trying to cause any sort of harm to Rory?
I don't recall specifically, but I might need to be refreshed on that, but I don't recall that specifically. I just remember she was really yelling at Rory about Rory's performance and more so yelling at her than usual.
Yeah, I want to show you this if I can. I want you to, do you have your deposition in front of you?
Yes, I do have it.
Your Honor, I'm constructively showing the witness what's been previously marked as your deposition.
Okay.
And Ms. Saracen, if you can, please flip through your deposition for a moment to just a brief moment, Your Honor. I'm trying to find the exact line.
I think I might remember something else that Coach Taylor had said that day. While you're looking, if you want me to.
Okay. Well, if you remember, can you tell us what your coach said?
Yeah, Coach Taylor had said to Rory, go on and take your sorry butt to Burma Road. You're useless on the field, so you might as well run until you pass out, which is what happened.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Pass the witness.
Any recross?
Nothing further from the defense for this witness, Your Honor.
All right, then may the witness can step down. Plaintiff, would you call your next witness?
Your Honor, at this time, that concludes the plaintiff's case in chief.
Very well. Do we have any motions that need to be heard?
Yes, Your Honor. May I be heard?
You may.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense moves for a judgment as a matter of law pursuant to Rule 50 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. It's proper for Your Honor to direct a verdict in favor of the defense because the plaintiff has failed to show a breach of duty, one of those required elements in this case. There has been no evidence that Coach Taylor breached his standard of care. Specifically, the only testimony we have heard about what happened that day comes from Aubrey Saracen. And Miss Saracen admitted that she did not tell Coach Taylor or the trainer or Jess Merriweather about any issues she thought Rory was having. She also admitted that to her knowledge, Rory Street never told Coach Taylor or Jess Merriweather about any complaints or symptoms she was having. Because there's no evidence that Coach Taylor was made aware of these issues, Coach Taylor cannot have breached his duty to Rory Street, and we believe a motion a judgment as a matter of law would be appropriate.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. In viewing the evidence in the light most favorable to the non-moving party as the plaintiff, there has been a reasonably and rationally based, legally sufficient evidentiary basis for a rational finder of fact such as yourself to conclude that we have in fact showed that the defendant was negligent and that the defendant's negligence has in fact caused Rory to lose her life. Your Honor, the mere fact that the defendant was the head coach in charge of a team of teenagers who played soccer imposes a duty upon that coach. Whether or not a teammate of the defendant or the teammate of Rory tells the coach or not, the coach is responsible. And we've heard testimony here today through Ms. Saracen and all the other deposition witnesses that it was 104 and 103 degrees, that a slide tackling drill that was never done was done. And that in fact, the mother of Rory had in fact been hurt by this drill, and that everyone saw, or people saw, that Rory was not performing as she typically did on the practice field. That meets the negligence as far as duty and breach, and then the causation is established by the fact of the expert testimony. And Dr. Mcconaughey stated that it was caused by the heat exhaustion and the exposure to that 103-degree summer day that led to the death of Rory Street. And for that reason, Your Honor, the judgment of matter of law should not be granted.
All right, we're going to deny the JML motion. If y'all will give me just a couple of seconds, I will give you a time check and then we will proceed with the defense case.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I also request a brief recess of just a couple of moments or just a couple of minutes?
No objection.
We'll take just about a minute. Leave your cameras on. We're trying to get through this as quick as possible because time is going to be an issue, so please don't go very far.
Yes, Your Honor.
We'll start back in 2 minutes, 10:21.
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, based on my math, the plaintiff has used 37 minutes, 14 seconds, which leaves you with 17 minutes, 46 seconds left. Defense has used 19:27, which leaves you with 35:33 left.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And with that, we will open the defense case in chief. Go ahead and call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Reese Taylor to the stand. Your Honor, may I proceed?
Ms. Taylor, can you hear and see us?
Yes.
All right, you've been sworn. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. Could you please introduce yourself to the judge?
My name is Reese Taylor.
How old are you, Ms. Taylor?
I am 48.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a soccer coach
Where are you a soccer coach?
at Waco High.
And how long have you been coaching soccer for?
Well, I've been a coach for like 26 years. And whenever you coach high school, it kind of works different. I've coached soccer specifically for at least 20 seasons.
And why did you choose to coach soccer?
It's been a lifelong dream. I love the sport. I grew up playing it, and what I wanted to be.
Now, did you ever receive an education to become a coach?
Yes, ma'am.
Where'd you go to school?
At Texas A&M,
And what was your degree in?
physical education.
So, where are you familiar with what happened on September 7th of 2018?
Unfortunately, yes, ma'am.
Where were you working on that day?
At Waco High.
And how did that day start for you?
It was a normal day. It was a hot summer day in Texas, and we were gearing up. It was the beginning of the season, and it was a practice day.
Was one of your players named Rory Street?
Yes, ma'am.
How long did you coach Rory?
For the entire time, I'd been her coach since she'd been in high school.
And was she at the practice on September 7th?
Yes.
Now, how long had Rory been practicing before September 7th? That season specifically.
Season. We had been practicing for a couple weeks.
And could you tell us a little bit about what a typical practice might look like?
Well, the team will go out and start stretching, and then we'll start some drills.
What was the plan for September 7th out of the ordinary?
No, ma'am.
So how did you begin practice on September 7th?
Stretching.
And what did you do after the players warmed up? I don't remember exactly. I think we were doing a scrimmage. That's right. Did you have Rory run any drills that day?
Yes. During practice, Rory wasn't working. She wasn't performing as she usually did. And I thought that she was just slacking off. So I had to run Burma Road.
Now, is this normal when players are slacking off?
Absolutely. It's been a disciplinary technique at Waco High since I went there.
Could you tell us a little bit, describe for us what that Burma Road drill looked like?
The player will sprint for 30 yards and then dribble the ball and make a goal and then bear call back to the start.
Now, was Rory the first player at Waco High that had ever run this drill?
No. Even before I went to school there, because I went to high school at Waco. Even before I went to school there, it was a tradition that had been used to discipline students.
To your knowledge, had anybody ever had trouble running that drill?
It's a hard drill, so I'd say I personally had trouble running it, but I don't think it was not anything that needed medical attention.
Now, after that Burma Road drill, did you notice anything about Rory?
I thought she was still slacking off. She didn't look out of the ordinary. She wasn't sweating any more than any of the other players. She just seemed like she was slacking off still.
Did you have her run any other drills after Burma Road?
Yes.
What was that drill? Okay.
Slide tackles. I had her start working on slide tackles.
What's a slide tackle?
Well, one player will be dribbling the ball, and the object of the slide tackle is to get the ball away from that player. Another player will come and slide out to the side, and it's a pretty dangerous maneuver that people do in games. So that's why we practice it.
Well, Coach, I have to ask, if it can be dangerous, why were you running the drill at practice?
That's exactly why, actually. I'm not going to let my team go out unprepared to deal with something like that. Whether or not you practice it, somebody's going to do it to you. But if you haven't practiced it, it can be dangerous, and you can get hurt, or the person doing it can get hurt.
So could you tell us how that slide tackle drill started on September 7th?
It started, I don't remember exactly how it started.
Sure. Was Rory having any difficulty doing the slide tackles?
No, not at first. No.
What happened during these slide tackles? Were you standing next to Rory?
No, I was off on the sidelines. I was definitely watching it, but I wasn't up near her.
Now, at any point in time during these slide tackles, did you touch Rory?
Absolutely not.
Coach, could you tell us about what happened to Rory during this drill?
Well, at first we were doing the slide tackles, and nothing was going wrong. And then I was watching her. She didn't show any signs of struggling other than heavy breathing and normal sweating. And then she just fell. And I immediately called the practice and ran over and called 911. But it was too late.
Coach, did you ever do these drills to hurt Rory?
Absolutely not.
Did you have her do these drills because you were angry?
No.
Why did you have her do those drills?
As a disciplinary technique. The drills are important to learn, and discipline is also important for my players. In order for a team of a bunch of teenagers to function correctly, there has to be some sort of discipline, and they have to look up to me and respect me. And that's what I was using it for.
Now, Coach Taylor, on September 7th, did Rory ever tell you that she wasn't feeling okay that day?
No.
Did she ask for a break?
No.
Did she ask for water? Did she ask to see the trainer?
No.
Did you, at any point in time, see signs of a medical emergency?
I did not.
Do you know a woman named Aubrey Saracen?
I do.
Who was Aubrey?
One of my players. I know she blames me for losing her starting position, but she kind of has disciplinary issues, and she didn't perform as well as another player, as my kid.
Was Aubrey there on September 7th?
Yes.
Did Aubrey ever tell you that it looked like Rory might not be doing okay?
No.
What about other players on the field? Did they tell you anything was wrong with Rory?
Nobody mentioned anything.
Coach, did you have a trainer on site on September 7th?
Yes, ma'am, Miss Merriweather.
Did that trainer say that they noticed anything wrong with Rory?
No.
Did anyone on site that day tell you that they didn't think Rory could handle those drills?
No.
Coach Taylor, have you ever asked a player to perform beyond their physical ability?
No.
Have you ever tried to endanger a player's health?
Absolutely not.
And Coach Taylor, when Rory Street walked onto the field on September 7th, did you know whether or not she had cocaine in her system?
I did not know up until later.
Thank you, Coach Taylor. Your Honor, pass the witness.
Ready to proceed when Your Honor is ready.
Cross-examination. Go ahead.
Your Honor. Good afternoon, Coach Taylor.
Good afternoon.
I want to talk with you about some things you just discussed with opposing counsel, more particularly the day of September 7th, 2018. Now, you just stated that you used the slide tackling drill to teach students how to slide correctly, right?
Yes, sir.
But you also had an alternative reason for doing that with Rory, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
You had a motive to show Rory that her attitude wasn't appropriate, right?
Yes, sir.
And you wanted to use a physical drill to kind of get through to her, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you just said that slide tackling is dangerous, correct?
Yes, sir.
But you didn't find it to be dangerous to have 15 of Rory's teammates slide tackle her one after another?
No, sir.
And let's also talk about something else. I know you said you didn't know that Rory had a trace of cocaine in her system, but I want to talk about something you do know. You knew how hot it was in early September, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you know that the higher the temperature is, the more likely people can suffer from heat exhaustion, correct?
Yes, sir.
And yet, on September 7th, 2018, you held practice in the middle of the afternoon, right?
Yes, sir.
And as you've been sitting here today, you now know from what's been admitted as Exhibit 21 that around that time, it was over 100 degrees, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you would agree with me that anytime it's over 100 degrees, that's extremely hot, correct?
Yes, sir.
Even dangerous.
It could be.
Now, but just so we're clear, you still decided to have practice in the middle of the day, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the way you discipline your players, because you mentioned it a few times. Now, you didn't always work at Waco High School, correct?
No, sir.
In fact, you coached at a different school prior.
Yes, sir. University.
And much like on September 7th, you were upset with a
Your
player.
Honor, may I take a moment to renew our objection from pretrial? I believe co-counsel is about to go into that line of questioning that affects character evidence. And at this point, I would ask that Your Honor rehear that objection or note it for the record.
You can I'll briefly rehear it if you'd like to argue it shortly.
Yes, Your Honor. Co-counsel is about to go into a line of questioning about a prior job that took place long before the incident on September 7th, 2018, in which Coach Taylor pushed a student onto the ground. Your Honor, this is exactly the reason that 404 was created, to prevent these types of specific instances of conduct coming into evidence in order to prove that on a specific occasion, the defendant acted in accordance with that character trait. Therefore, this is inadmissible under Rule 404, and we believe it should be excluded.
Brief response.
Yes, Your Honor. Again, opposing counsel is correct. In civil cases, character evidence cannot be used for propensity purpose. However, here, 404B allows us to use character evidence for a non-propensity purpose, and that's exactly what I'm doing here, to show an intent. In the defendant's previous position as a soccer coach at a high school, they intentionally put their hands on a different player and caused them harm, just like the intentional acts that caused harm to Rory Street in this case. I'm not offering it for propensity purpose. I'm showing that he has a pattern of intentionally acting.
I'm going to stay with my previous ruling.
Yes, Your Honor.
Coach Taylor, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Now, you were a head coach for another soccer team, correct?
Yes, sir.
And while you were a head coach there, you got upset with one of your players, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
They were lollygagging, right?
Yes, sir.
Much like you thought Rory was lollygagging, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that previous position, you put your hands on a player, correct?
I did.
You pushed him to the ground.
I did.
And you would agree with me that that's harmful to a player, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, on September 7th, 2017, you created that slide tackling drill, right?
The specific way we did the drill, yes.
It had never been done before that way in Waco High School, correct?
I had never done it.
Excuse me?
I had never done it that way.
And during that drill, you watched Rory suffer slide tackle after slide tackle for 15 times, right?
She did.
And on that 15th time, you didn't say the drill is over, did you?
Whenever she fell?
Yes, you didn't end the drill on your own, correct?
Well, it ended.
Yeah, but it wasn't because you blew your whistle to say the drill was over, was it?
No.
It was actually because during your drill, Rory Street collapsed, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was while she was at your soccer practice, correct?
Yes.
Of the soccer team you are the head coach for, right?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Pass the witness.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
May.
Coach Taylor, opposing counsel just asked you about a prior job in an incident where you pushed a student. Could you tell us, is that the only time that's ever happened?
It absolutely is, and it was extremely inappropriate. I shouldn't have done it.
Prior to that incident, had you ever touched a student?
No.
After that incident, have you ever put your hands on a student?
No.
Now, Coach Taylor, opposing counsel also just asked you some questions about that slide tackle drill. Were slide tackles a normal part of soccer?
Yes.
Is discipline a normal part of sports?
Yes.
Are physical drills a normal part of sports?
Yes.
Why are they normal?
It's sports are inherently physical.
Coach, when you were running all of the drills on September 7th, were all of your other players able to complete them?
Yes.
While Rory was running that slide tackle drill, did you ever notice that she might have needed medical attention?
I did not.
Thank you, Coach Taylor. Your Honor, pass the witness.
Any recross?
Your Honor, just one brief question. If I may proceed.
You may.
Coach Taylor, were you on the field that Rory Taylor was doing the Burma drill at?
Objection, Your Honor, outside the scope of redirect.
Sustained.
With that being said, Your Honor, nothing further.
All right. May this witness step down?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, at this time, the defense would like to read in portions of an oral deposition of Jess Merriweather taken on April 11th of 2019. My co-counsel is ready to assist me in reading in portions of this deposition.
Very well. Proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm going to start on page 2, line 6. Good morning. Would you please state your name for the record?
Hello there. My name is Jess Merriweather.
How old are you, Jess?
I'm 28 years old.
Where do you live?
I live in Waco, Texas.
How long have you lived in Waco?
Just a couple of years now. I grew up in Houston, then I went to Texas A&M for undergrad, and then I got a master's degree in sports training from A&M as well. After that, I worked for a couple of years at another high school in College Station before I got the job at Waco High.
And what is your job at Waco High?
I'm an athletic trainer, and I also teach health.
What is the job of an athletic trainer at high school?
We have various teams and activities at the school that involve some level of physical activity and competition, everything from football to soccer to volleyball to cheerleading and drill team. As a trainer, I work with the students that participate in those activities to keep them healthy and in shape and to treat any injuries that they have.
Do you attend practices?
Yes, depending on what time of the year it may be football or soccer or something else, but there is always a trainer at any official practice for our various athletic teams.
How long have you been an athletic trainer?
About 2 years now.
And what did you do at the high school and college station before you moved to Waco and took the job at Waco High?
I taught health.
Did you do any athletic training while you were at A&M?
Well, that was the whole point of the program. I worked with football players, track athletes, basketball players, and more while completing my master's degree in sports training. So it isn't like the job at Waco High was the first time that I've ever done athletic training.
You told us earlier that you were 28 years old. Is that a pretty common age for an athletic trainer in your position?
Well, I am the youngest trainer in the Waco Independent School District, and in fact, I'm the youngest one ever in the history of the position. So I guess that gives you your answer.
Are you familiar with Coach Reese Taylor?
I am.
Who is Coach Taylor?
Coach Taylor is the varsity soccer coach at Waco High.
Have you worked with Coach Taylor?
I have.
In what capacity?
As a trainer. So I've attended soccer practices and soccer games where Coach Taylor was the coach. I've worked with Coach Taylor in order to treat injured players, and I've worked with Coach Taylor just overseeing the students during practices and games.
Do you have any role in designing drills for practices?
No, that's all Coach Taylor.
Do you have any role in disciplining players?
No, that's all Coach Taylor as well. I'm certainly there overseeing any on-field discipline that takes place, but I'm not directing the discipline or deciding who should be disciplined.
Do you know who Rory Street was?
Yeah, I knew Rory. It's very sad what happened.
Well, how did you know Rory?
Well, she was a varsity soccer player, so I worked with her as a trainer for the varsity soccer team, just like any other player.
Now going on to page 5, line 15. What about cocaine? How does that affect an athlete?
Cocaine is particularly dangerous. It killed Lynn Bias.
Sorry?
I'd like to object, Your Honor. The witness is not qualified to discuss particular dangers of cocaine. This is an athletic trainer. I'm not a medical doctor. We've heard no testimony of their familiarity with toxicology or chemistry or anything.
May I be heard on that, Your Honor?
May.
Your Honor, we've just heard the witness testify that he received his master's degree in sports training from A&M, as well as he's been working as a health instructor at a high school. Now, I'm not saying that this qualifies the witness to talk about specifics of cocaine use, but certainly as a health instructor at a high school, he has some sort of general knowledge about how cocaine might affect someone.
Your objection is overruled. The witness can talk about his general knowledge related to his work and his schooling from what he knows.
So what about cocaine? How does that affect an athlete?
Cocaine is particularly dangerous. It killed Lynn Bias and Don Rogers. Diego Maradona had a 20-year addiction that derailed his career. Darryl Strawberry and Dwight Gooden also come to mind.
You said that you worked with Rory as an athletic trainer. Did you interact with Rory in any other capacity?
Rory was in my health class that year, so I would see her 3 days out of the week in health class.
Now going to page 8, line 8. Were you at practice the day Rory died?
I was.
Did you see Rory running Burma Road?
I saw Rory over on Burma Road, but I wasn't watching her closely.
Did you see Rory during the slide tackling drill?
Again, I saw that it was happening, and I certainly saw parts of it, but I didn't watch it closely.
What were you doing while all of this was going on?
I was taping another student's ankle about 40 yards away.
At any time, did you see Rory stumbling, faltering, or slowing down in a way that would have indicated she was in trouble?
No, not at all.
Was Rory sweating hard?
I mean, yes, but everyone was, including me. It was a really hot day.
Did Rory ever say anything to you about feeling bad that day?
Nope, never said anything to me. And here's the thing. I'm there to take care of those players, and they know it. I'm kind of a combination trainer and guardian to the team. So they trust me, and I trust them to tell me if something is wrong or if they're hurting. Rory didn't say a word, and she would have. Rory was a tough kid, but she knew her limits and would let me or coach know when she needed water.
Are the players allowed to get water when they want it?
Yes, all they have to do is ask, even if we're not on a water break.
Now, reading from line 21, based on your knowledge and experience in the field of physical education and sports training, do you think the Coach Taylor's means of disciplining Rory Street on the day in question were reasonable or appropriate?
I don't think they were unusual at all. Coach Taylor is a winning coach that pushes players, but Coach Taylor is also concerned about player safety. We talk about it all the time. So I would term Coach Taylor's conduct and approach to discipline as orthodox in every sense of the word.
Thank you, Your Honor. Pass the witness.
Cross-examination?
No cross-examination, Your Honor.
All right. Anything further from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. As it was determined by a pretrial order to be pre-admitted, we would also like to read a brief portion of Exhibit 18, the expert report of Spencer London, onto the record and bring some things to Your Honor's attention. May I proceed?
Very well, you can proceed.
And Mr. Stirrup, are you able to bring up Exhibit 18 onto the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Under overview of opinion, Rory Street death was caused, at least in part, by the use of cocaine. Cocaine use can lead to the following symptoms: constricting blood vessels, dilated pupils, nausea and vomiting, raised body temperature and blood pressure, a fast or irregular heartbeat, tremors and muscle twitches, restlessness, and chest pain. Your Honor, Spencer London also goes on to note that cocaine use, well, it can ultimately lead to a cardiac arrhythmia. And further on page 3, he notes that Rory Street's heart showed signs of myocarditis, which is an inflammation or swelling of the heart muscle. And he says myocarditis is one of the physical symptoms associated with cocaine use. That's why this finding was also consistent with cocaine use. Your Honor, that concludes our reading of the portion of Exhibit 18 onto the record. And at this time, the defense would rest our case in chief and renew our motion for a judgment as a matter of law.
Very well. Your motion as a judgment as a matter of law is going to be denied. Plaintiff, anything further? Or shall we proceed to opening statements? Pardon me, proceed to closing arguments.
Yes, Your Honor, if possible, could we please get a brief recess?
You've got about 30 seconds while I tally things up. We are on a tight schedule and can't be running around today.
Perfect.
I will give y'all time checks as soon as I've got the math done. Okay, are both parties ready to proceed to closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, for the plaintiff, I have 13 minutes, 40 seconds remaining. For the defense, 15 minutes, 27 seconds. Plaintiff, you can proceed when you are ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. When the public entrusts someone with coaching our student athletes, that person has responsibilities. They have to operate their practices as safely as reasonably possible, and they cannot put our students in harm's way. And on September 7th, 2018, that is exactly what the defendant, Coach Taylor, did when he chose not to run his practice as safe as reasonably possible and instead decided to put Rory Street directly in harm's way. On September 7th, 2017, as Rory Street makes her way onto the practice field, the defendant is oblivious to the dangers that are present that day. His team is doing warm-up drills and practicing when all of a sudden he notices that his star player, Rory, is not performing like she would like. She tells Rory to leave the field, to go do Burma run, and that she is useless and she will run her until she passes out. It's at that moment, Rory goes back to the practice field, doing exactly what the defendant tells her to do until the defendant blows her whistle one more time, calling Rory back before her teammates, back to participate in a slide tackling drill that had never been done. Rory stands before a team, a tackling dummy for soccer tackle drills. The defendant blows the whistle the first time. Rory falls to the ground. Defendant tells Rory to do it again. Rory stands up. Defendant blows her whistle. Rory's crashed into again by another teammate, and for 14 times in a row, the defendant authorizes teammate after teammate to crash into Rory Street under the 103-degree Waco sun until the defendant decides she's seen enough. But before the defendant can make her decision, everything happens. Rory hears the coach's whistle one last time. She dribbles the ball towards her teammate. Her teammate collides with her one last time, and Rory collapses on the field that she loves to play soccer on one last time. And Rory's heart beat one last time. And Your Honor, it was the defendant's decision to not make that practice or her drills as safe as reasonably possible, and deciding to put Rory in front of a dangerous condition as that practice, that brought us here today. Now, in just a few moments, you'll be looking at your verdict sheet. And on that verdict sheet, there are two questions. Question one asks you, was the defendant negligent? And was the negligent the proximate cause of the death of Rory? And question two asks you to apportion comparative negligence responsibilities. And I want to walk you through those questions here today and tell you the evidence you should consider when answering both. Now, question number one asks you to consider whether or not the defendant acted negligently. And the law here states that negligence is comprised of a duty and a breach of a duty. And if you look on the verdict form, it'll tell you ordinary care means a degree of care that would be used by a person of ordinary prudence under the same or similar circumstances. And Your Honor, this is an easy question to answer. The defendant, an adult, a head coach, and the person responsible for her soccer team was responsible for keeping Rory safe on September 7th, 2017. The defendant was the one who called when practice happened. The defendant is the one that calls when practice ends, and the defendant decides what drills they do. So when you consider whether or not Coach Taylor owed a duty to Rory, you should easily understand that answer is yes. And then you go to the breach. And Your Honor, the breach has been proven here today by several different types of evidence. First, we had to consider the circumstances that were at play on September 7th, 2018. We saw from Exhibit 21, the NOAA report, that it was 103 degrees outside that day. We heard from Miss Saracen that it was scorching, and that they still decided to practice in the middle of the day, even though they only play games in the evenings in the early parts of the summer, like in September. But it goes even further, because the same conditions also existed when you consider the drills. You consider how none of the drill, or the drill that Rory died in, was never done before. And Your Honor, when the defense or defendant brought his team out onto that field in 103-degree temperature, he was negligent, or she was negligent right there. But it went deeper. It went to the activities that the defendant had her team do. Opposing counsel tried to come before you and state that the defendant was doing things normally, but that's not the case. You heard first and foremost that the defendant sent Rory Taylor to do a drill on Burma Road. And once the drill completed, the defendant didn't blow the whistle and allow Rory to rest. No, the defendant called Rory back to the practice and gave her further punishment. The defendant told you that, yeah, it was good to practice slide tackling, but she needed to use a physical drill to get through to Rory. And the defendant did that through that slide tackling drill. And that slide tackling drill, where the defendant blew her whistle 15 times, where the defendant watched after teammate crashed into Rory Street, was not what a reasonably prudent person would do, and surely not what a reasonably prudent coach would do. So that's the second way. Also consider the signs and symptoms of Rory. You heard that in practice, Rory was normally a great athlete. Rory was one of the best players on her team. The best players on teams, especially in soccer, they can dribble, they can pass, they can hit empty net goals. But on September 7th, 2018, the defendant saw that and didn't bother to ask Rory if she was okay. She didn't bother to send Rory to the training table to see why she wasn't performing as she normally did. She simply told Rory, take her butt to Burnham Road. She's of no use to her. She's going to run her until she passes out. And Your Honor, she passed out. And unfortunately, Rory passed away. So when you ask yourself, did the defendant breach his duty of care, or her duty of care owed to Rory? You should say yes. And then you go to the last question. And the last question I'll ask you, Your Honor, the proximate cause. And proximate cause is an issue where you must determine, is it reasonably foreseeable for the negligent conduct of a defendant to bring about the death or the harm that the plaintiff suffered? And Your Honor, yes. Now, I want to be clear. Opposing counsel came before you and tried to point to some sort of trace cocaine elements in the blood of Rory Street. But let's be clear, Your Honor. Those were trace elements. Rory had been practicing. The cocaine in her system had been dissipating. She didn't fall out when she took it. She didn't pass out when she immediately got to practice. She didn't pass out while she was stretching. Rory lost consciousness while she was completing the defendant's drill. This had nothing to do with trace cocaine amounts. But in an attempt to convince you otherwise, the defense brought before you an expert, Mr. London. Your Honor, Mr. London doesn't even have a doctorate degree. He's, in fact, only had a BS in toxicology and couldn't even point to a definitive cause of death. You want to know why, Your Honor? Because that expert was not there and was not the treating physician. And that's why we brought before you people who were there. We brought before you the friend of Rory Street to tell you that she saw as Rory was knocked down time and time again during the defendant's drill. To tell you that she was experiencing the heat that the defendant instructed her team to do their practice in, that she heard as the defendant yelled humiliating language to Rory as she tried to discipline her. Then you heard from the mother of Rory Street, the woman who's had to deal with this tragic loss of her loved one. She told you that she never once would have thought her healthy, vibrant, and potentially successful daughter would be subject to slide tackle. She told you that throughout her life, she had been a healthy child, that the pediatricians never gave them anything other than a clean bill of health. And that she would have never thought when she sent her daughter home or to school and to practice with the defendant, she would never see her again. So, Your Honor, when you ask yourself, what was the cause, the real cause, you should feel confident in knowing that the defense expert was incorrect. The real cause, like you heard from our expert, was the exposure that the defendant made in putting Rory Street in 103-degree temperatures and running violent and deadly drills on her. So when you answer that first question, Your Honor, was the defendant negligent? And did the defendant's negligence proximately cause the harm that Rory Street suffered? You should feel confident in answering yes to that question. And because you should feel confident in answering yes, you should also be answering no. Rory Street was not the cause of her death. And once you answer that question, Your Honor, your job here today is done. Now, there's an additional question on the back of that verdict form, but it simply asks you to apportion responsibility. And because Rory was not responsible for being on that field in that summer day, and was not responsible for running the Burma drill, and was not responsible for overlooking the signs that she was hurt, she is not responsible for her death. So in just a few moments, when you fill out that verdict form, you should find the defendant is liable. And I know this is what you'll do because the evidence today has shown you that on September 7th, 2018, it was the defendant's choice not to run her practice as safe as reasonably possible. And it was the defendant's choice to put Rory Street directly in death's way. Thank you, Your Honor.
Defense closing argument.
Yes, Your Honor. I'll adjust this. May it please the court. Something was different. At the beginning of this case, you may have been asking yourself, what was different? Your Honor, you learned today that what was different was that Rory Street had cocaine in her system. Now, the plaintiff just got up here a moment ago and tried to tell you that this was all Coach Reese Taylor's fault. The way she pushed her kids that day, the way she ran that practice, the drills she had them do. They tried to tell you that this is what caused Rory's death. But, Your Honor, we know that that's not what happened. We know that on September 7th, 2018, Rory was responding to those drills well at first. We know that Coach Taylor was watching from the sideline and sees Rory get back up after every drill and keep going. She's tired, but she seems fine. Coach Taylor doesn't notice anything wrong. Jess Merriweather doesn't notice anything wrong. Aubrey Saracen didn't say that anything was wrong. And you learned today that even Rory didn't tell Coach Taylor that something wasn't right. But then things took a turn for the worse. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Rory collapsed to the ground. And Coach Taylor runs up to her panicked. What do we do? Please get somebody, call 911. Help. But it was too late. Coach Taylor is shocked. This has never happened before. What happened? What was different about this practice? Your Honor, we know now that what was different was Rory Street and the cocaine she had in her system. Cocaine that was causing her heart to swell, cocaine that was causing her body temperature to rise, cocaine that was causing her blood vessels to constrict, cocaine that was killing her. Cocaine is what was different. It was the cocaine in Rory's system, not the actions of Coach Taylor, that caused her untimely death. But today the plaintiff is suing Reese Taylor for wrongful death. And we told you that when they did that, that meant they had to prove a couple of things to you today. They have to prove to you that Coach Taylor had a duty, that she breached that duty, and that breach is what caused Rory's death. And they have to prove all of this to you by a preponderance of the evidence, simply more likely than not. But they haven't been able to do that because it wasn't Coach Taylor's actions that caused Rory's death. It was the cocaine. Now, Your Honor, I want to be clear. We are not contesting that Coach Taylor had a duty to her athletes. Of course she did. And that duty is to keep them safe within reason, to keep them safe from dangers that she knows about. But that's not what happened on September 7th, 2018. The plaintiff tried to tell you that what happened on September 7th, 2018 was a tyrant coach that came in and pushed her kids and made them run drills and forced them beyond what they were capable of doing. Now we learned that that's not what happened. What we learned happened today was a normal soccer practice. Let's put this practice in context. These are elite soccer players that want to reach the state championship. And in Texas, that's a tall order. They practice out in the heat and out in the sun because their games could be in the sun too. They've got to get ready for them. That's why Coach Taylor pushes her kids. She pushes them to be better, but she knows when it's not safe anymore. Now, you don't have to like Coach Taylor's coaching style. You can think that she was harsh or a bit old school, or maybe you didn't like the way she spoke all of the time. That's all okay, because that's not what the law calls unreasonable. We learned today that Coach Taylor had her athletes run something called Burma Road. And a moment ago, the plaintiff just got up here and told you that this drill was out of the question, that you can't make students run for 30 yards and 60 yards. You can't make them dribble a ball for that long out in the heat. But Your Honor, the kids at Waco High have been running the Burma Road drill for decades. They've been running that road for decades without any problem, without any serious issue. This is a normal conditioning practice of soccer athletes. It's something that athletes in their prime know how to handle. But then the plaintiff told you, well, then I guess the real problem must be that they were out in the heat and it was too hot and the coach didn't give them water breaks and he should have let them take a break. That's not what happened. You heard Coach Taylor and Jess Merriweather tell you that the kids were allowed to take water breaks whenever they needed to. All they had to do was ask. Aubrey Saracen told you that they could take water breaks whenever they needed to. Coach Taylor wasn't stopping them from taking a break. She said, just tell me when you need a breather. I'll give you one. So then plaintiff said, well, if it's not Burma Road and it's not the heat and it's not the water, well, surely where the line was drawn with these slide tackle drills, that must have been where Coach Taylor crossed the line. Your Honor, slide tackles are a normal part of the soccer game. And yes, they can be dangerous, but the reason that it's important to practice them is so we prevent some of that danger. You learned today that those slide tackle drills can injure a player. And Coach Taylor told you that she knew that those tackles, that her students could be tackled during a game. So she wanted to teach them how to respond to them, how to do them safely without hurting another person, how to protect themselves when they got tackled. That's why Coach Taylor was doing those slide tackle drills, to protect her students from getting hurt in a game. But then the plaintiff called Aubrey Saracen, and she told you Coach Taylor could be tough. And members of Your Honor, I want to make really clear what the plaintiff has done today. They have based their entire case on Aubrey Saracen. They didn't call another person to that stand that told you anything about what happened on September 7th. Everything that the plaintiff has told you about what happened at practice that day came from Aubrey. There's a problem with that, Your Honor. The problem is that Aubrey Saracen wasn't Coach Taylor's biggest fan. The problem was that the first time she told anybody that Coach Taylor was a problem was in her deposition 7 months after the accident. The first time she mentioned anything to anybody about something that Rory might have been going through was months after Rory had passed away. And then Aubrey got on the stand and she told you, well, Coach Taylor, during the slide tackle drill, she got out of hand. She was yelling and she wouldn't stop, and she made Rory go again and again and again. That's not what Coach Taylor said happened. Coach Taylor said that Rory was okay, that she was popping back up after every drill and headed back to the sideline ready to go again. That's what Jess Merriweather said happened. So how can we be sure what really happened? Well, Your Honor, it's the plaintiff with the burden in today's case. And if they had really wanted to make sure that it was Aubrey's story that was right, if they really wanted to convince you that Aubrey saw all of this happen, you know who they could have called? The 15 other players standing on the sidelines during the slide tackle drill. The 15 other players who were actually there and present when Rory was running that drill. Not Aubrey Saracen, who was off on another field 20 yards away. Not Aubrey Saracen, who wasn't paying attention to the slide tackle drill, who couldn't see what was really happening, who couldn't hear what was happening. There were 15 other players that could have told us what happened during that drill. The plaintiff didn't call them. There's a reason for that, Your Honor. They didn't want to hear what they'd have to say. So when Rory collapsed during that drill, Coach Taylor told you she was confused. This had never happened before during a practice. So what made this practice different? Cocaine. We learned today that the one variable, the one thing that was different on September 7th that hadn't happened ever before in any of the soccer practices at Waco High was that Rory Street had cocaine in her system. Your Honor, I am not judging Rory Street for ingesting cocaine. She was a high school student, and high school students, they make mistakes sometimes. That's okay. What we're saying is that Coach Taylor didn't know. And that's important because what the plaintiff is asking you to do is to create this duty in coaches to know, to automatically assume, to have knowledge that their players have taken a drug behind their back. That's just not reasonable. So we know it was the cocaine that impacted Riley. And a moment ago, when the plaintiff was talking to you about that, they said that the cocaine was nominal. They used a word from their own expert's report, and the expert said, well, it couldn't have been the cocaine because it was this trace nominal amount, and therefore I know that that was the cause of Rory's death. Well, the plaintiff skipped a part of that expert's report. Because you'll see the expert said that another reason that dosage might have been so low was because there was a great deal of time between ingestion and testing. That means that the expert didn't keep looking for other answers. The expert told us that that amount of cocaine in her system could have been low because she was tested substantially after she took it. The next day, a whole 24 hours had passed before she was tested for cocaine. There's something else the plaintiff's expert didn't do. The plaintiff's expert didn't bother to look into whether or not cocaine could have killed Rory Street. Nowhere in that report will you find any evidence of the plaintiff's expert doing any analysis on whether or not cocaine was affecting her heart that day. A medical doctor found cocaine in a high school student's system and didn't bother to ask if that was the thing that hurt her heart? Your Honor, that just doesn't make sense. But we know that it affected her heart because Spencer London also ran an analysis. He actually looked into the fact of whether that cocaine could have impacted Rory Street's heart. He told us that it did. He told us that Rory was showing signs of something called myocarditis. That's the heart swelling, a symptom that's consistent with cocaine use. That's why Rory Street died on September 7th. It was the cocaine, not the actions of her coach. Your Honor, I understand. When we lose someone, especially a young high school student, it is natural to want to find someone to blame. And the hardest thing can be to realize that sometimes there just isn't anyone to blame. What we do know is that it wasn't Coach Taylor. What we do know is that Coach Taylor was doing her job normally. We know that something was different, and that was the cocaine in Rory's system. And because it wasn't the actions of Coach Taylor, because the plaintiff hasn't been able to prove that those actions actually caused Rory's death, you have to find Coach Reese Taylor not liable. Thank you.
Plaintiff's rebuttal.
Yes, Your Honor, if I may briefly have a time check on that.
You have 1 minute and 2 seconds.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Ms. Lipe, if you could please have the verdict form queued up for me. Ready to proceed, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Members of the jury, Your Honor, opposing counsel just came before you and said September 7th, 2018 was normal. Your Honor, I can't believe that's what she said. Because if you ask Aubrey Saracen, was it normal for 15 players to slide tackle one time and time again? She would tell you no. If you asked the coach, was it normal to run the slide tackling drill? She would tell you no. If you asked Miss Jordan Street, was it normal for her only daughter to leave home that day and die at soccer practice during her coach's drill, she would tell you no. And if you went to the gravesite of Rory Street and saw her tombstone in the ground and asked, is that normal for a 17-year-old and 18-year-old athlete to die so young? You would know it's no. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. That will conclude our trial. Judges, if y'all will stay on the line until you've been released, go ahead and submit your ballots, and they will be in here as soon as we know. And I will release you, and we can go ahead and get started on the next round.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Excellent job by both of you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm so sorry, Your Honor. Can I ask a follow-up question really quick? Did you tell us to go ahead and pop out or hold on for just a second?
Everyone stay in the room until
Okay.
once
Sorry,
we have
gotcha.
the ballots in, then we'll start moving people out.
Thank you.